Welcome to the Sleepster, where each story drifts slowly into the quiet edges of sleep, and curiosity is the only thing you need to carry. Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the ocean's surface? Dive into a world of fire and ice as we explore the hidden realm of underwater volcanoes, where life thrives in extreme conditions, and the Earth's tectonic plates collide in slow, ancient silence. Tonight, we'll sink together into the dark heart of the sea, where volcanic giants sleep and creation rises quietly from the ocean floor. So, take a breath, let the waves carry your thoughts, and allow the story to begin. The ocean has always held its breath in mystery. It spreads beneath the moonlight like a sleeping creature, vast and endless, a shimmering veil drawn over the forgotten. But below that surface, beneath the tides and the slow dance of the moon, lie mountains that do not reach for the sky. They rise in darkness, in silence, and in fire. These are the underwater volcanoes, the mountains of the deep hand. They are more numerous, more ancient, and more powerful than nearly anything we see above the sea. As you close your eyes and let your breath follow the slow rhythm of the tide, imagine descending now, deeper and deeper still. You pass through soft layers of blue, where the light dances gently, filtering like silk. Fish drift like leaves in slow-motion currents, unaware, unworried. Deeper still, you go, as light fades, and the weight of water presses gently against your skin. Not heavy, but grounding. A reminder that this world, this vast aquatic temple holds stories the surface has long forgotten. Far below, the sea floor stretches out not as a flat plain, but as a land of peaks and valleys, ridges and rifts, trenches and towers. And there, among the folds of the Earth's hidden skin, sleep the volcanoes of the ocean floor. They are not gone. They are not dead. They are waiting. You may not know this, but over 75% of Earth's volcanic activity happens under the ocean. These mountains, thousands of them, rise quietly from the seabeds, some tall enough to rival Everest, yet almost completely invisible to us. They form chains, ridges, ranges, all sculpted by the slow, invisible motion of tectonic plates. One of these underwater chains stretches over 65,000 kilometers longer than any mountain range on land. It is called the Mid-Ocean Ridge, and it is not just a geological feature. It is a spine, a living, breathing seam where the Earth is still growing. There, deep in the abyssal dark, magma seeps through cracks in the crust, forming new ocean floor. A slow exhale from the molten lungs of the Earth. It does not roar. It does not erupt with drama and thunder like volcanoes on land. It pulses, gently, consistently, with the same rhythm that formed continents, shifted seas, and continues to shape the planet even now while you sleep. And though you may never see them with your own eyes, some of these underwater volcanoes do reach high enough to break the surface, briefly. When they do, they give birth to new islands. Iceland was born from a volcanic seam in the Atlantic. Hawaii too, a chain of islands rising like stepping stones from a mantle hotspot. Each began in darkness, with eruptions no one saw, in a world no one touched, and still, they rose. In the Pacific, new volcanoes are forming even now. One of them, Loi'i, is building itself slowly off the coast of Hawaii. It sleeps 2 miles below the waves. But one day, not so long from now, it will become an island of its own. New land, born from fire and water. Let that idea drift through your mind now, that new worlds are still being made, not in space, but in the silence beneath your feet. There's something soothing in that, isn't there? That while you lie still, listening, the Earth is reshaping itself quietly, patiently without asking permission. Creation doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it hums. You may imagine now what it feels like to rest on the ocean floor in the shadow of a volcanic mountain. Where the water is still, the world above is a forgotten dream, and the only sound is the slow crackle of heat meeting cold. As magma seeps into the sea, there are creatures down here too, strange, glowing organisms that have never known light. They do not need the sun. They live off geothermal energy, the raw heat from the Earth's core. Near hydrothermal vents, called black smokers, life thrives in the darkness, surrounded by water as hot as boiling oil, and yet it blooms. Tube worms, blind shrimp, alien-like crabs, ... They dance not to the rhythm of sunlight, but to the music of heat and pressure. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If life can grow in such silence, such darkness, such heat, then what other forms of life might exist, not just beneath our oceans, but beneath oceans on other worlds? Jupiter's moon, Europa, is thought to have a vast subsurface ocean. So is Saturn's moon, Enceladus. And where there is heat and water, and the potential for volcanoes beneath the ice, there may be life, but that's for another dream. Tonight, you rest here, among the sleeping giants of Earth's abyss. The ones that grow without praise, the ones that rise without being seen, the ones that whisper their story only to the dark. And now, as your breath slows, as the weight of the ocean holds you gently, you may let go of the surface and sink fully into the mystery of the mountains of the deep. Down here, in the vast cathedral of silence, the earth is not still, it is alive, shifting, stretching, beneath the calm surface of the ocean. A slow-motion ballet of destruction and rebirth plays out every moment, unseen by nearly every eye on earth. You may be floating now, suspended in this darkness, gently carried by invisible currents. But beneath you, the sea floor trembles, and when it does, the water changes. There's no sound like thunder, no flash of fire in the sky, just a pulse, a bloom, a sudden exhale of lava into water. Imagine molten rock, bright, burning, liquefied. Stone erupting into a world of pressure and ice-cold blackness. The clash is not chaos, it is chemistry. The lava doesn't explode, it cools rapidly. It curls and folds like soft rope, forming what geologists call pillow lava. Rounded, bulbous, and strangely beautiful. Each shape tells the story of a moment of contact between fire and sea. You can almost feel the texture, as if drifting past these smooth, sleeping forms, carved by a moment of violence that now feels calm, cooled into stillness. But not all is quiet for long. Some underwater eruptions are more dramatic. They release volcanic gases so rapidly that the ocean shivers. These gases, like carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and even methane, can rise and change the chemistry of the surrounding waters. They can suffocate marine life or fuel new growth. Sometimes the release is so intense it triggers what's called a limnic eruption, a rare and sudden release of trapped gases that surges upward, displacing water, stunning sea life, and, in very rare cases, changing the balance of life for miles. But more often, the changes are gentle, subtle, like an artist reshaping the seafloor, one breath at a time. Each eruption deposits new minerals, new heat, new structures, and in that warmth, life begins again. It may seem strange to imagine life forming in such a place, in crushing pressure, total darkness, and scalding heat, but that is precisely what makes it possible. Down here, near volcanic vents, microbes thrive. They don't use sunlight, they don't photosynthesize, they use chemosynthesis, chemical energy from the earth, into fuel. These are some of the oldest forms of life known. Tiny, resilient, ancient. It is believed by some scientists that life on Earth may have begun here, not in ponds or lakes, but in hydrothermal vent fields, on the backs of volcanic activity, where heat and minerals met in just the right dance. And life, against all odds, found a way to begin. There's something peaceful in that idea, that out of pressure and darkness came light, not from above, but from within. Now, imagine those microbial colonies building upon each other, layer upon layer, over centuries, until strange creatures gather: tube worms stretching like living ribbons, white crabs scuttling across sulfur-stained stone, octopuses nesting in the warmth of extinct vents, folded into the folds of rock like dreamers curling into sleep. Each of these lives is a miracle, a story unfolding in the dark, unwitnessed, and yet fully alive. The sea does not need our attention to create. It builds in silence. It remembers without memory. It keeps its own time, and in the shadow of its volcanic mountains, it teaches us that life does not need comfort to bloom. It only needs the right kind of pressure, and a little warmth. As you drift now, beneath the weight of miles of ocean, you may sense something ancient, a feeling that this place, this dream of stone and water, was here long before you, and will be here long after. That's okay. You are just visiting, just listening, just remembering something your ancestors once knew, that the earth is not still, and it never sleeps, even when you do. Let that thought settle gently now. As the story of the deep continues without you, let the darkness cradle you, let the warmth hold you. You are safe, and the mountain sleeps, far beneath the breaking waves, where the sunlight fades into blue, and the blue fades into black. A slow architecture unfolds. You are floating now, not above the world, but beneath it, where gravity feels different, where time stretches, and where the mountains are not made by hands, but by heat and pressure and silence. These underwater volcanoes are not random. They do not simply appear. They follow patterns, rules etched into the Earth's shifting crust. They form chains, long, winding trails across the seafloor, known as volcanic arcs or seamount chains. Each mountain, each peak, each dome marks a moment in time, a point where fire touched water and new land began. It is as if the earth itself were writing a diary, not in words, but in stone. One of the most remarkable of these chains lies in the Pacific Ocean, the Emperor Hawaiian Seamount Chain. Imagine a line of volcanoes stretching nearly 6,000 kilometers from the northwest edge of the Pacific to the islands of Hawaii, a trail left behind by a hotspot, a plume of magma that remains stationary while the tectonic plate above it slowly drifts. Each volcano in this chain was once the center of that fiery attention. Each one erupted, grew tall, reached up toward the surface. And then, as the plate moved, the hotspot moved on, leaving behind a mountain, and beginning the next one like footprints on the ocean floor. Each mountain is a memory of where the earth once burned, and some of these memories are taller than any building humans have ever constructed. Take Mauna Kea, for example. It's located on the big island of Hawaii. Above sea level, it stands about 13,800 feet. But if you measure from its base on the ocean floor, Mauna Kea rises more than 33,500 feet, making it taller than Mount Everest. Yet, you would never know, because most of it is hidden, buried under the quiet weight of the sea. That's how much of the world works, doesn't it? The most powerful things, the tallest, the oldest, the deepest truths, remain unseen. Are there? They shape the world in silence. And so these volcanoes do not just build mountains. They build habitats, currents, ecosystems. Each underwater peak changes how the water flows. Like underwater cities, breaking currents, redirecting energy, sheltering fish, guiding the migrations of whales. They create turbulence that stirs nutrients from the deep, fueling plankton blooms, which in turn feed fish, which feed everything else you see. These volcanoes are not just geological, they are biological architects. They build the structure upon which ocean life depends. You might imagine yourself now, drifting beside one of these towering seamounts. There's no sunlight here, and yet it's not cold. There's a gentle current brushing past your skin, a slow rhythm like the earth breathing, and around you schools of fish circle in tight spirals, drawn to the nutrients that rise along the slope. Coral grows even here, fragile fans and soft anemones clinging to the volcanic rock. They sway with the movement of the sea, as if whispering secrets to the passing water. You float among them, a visitor in a city no one built, and yet somehow always existed. The volcanoes are sleeping now, but they are not gone. They still hum quietly deep inside. You can feel it if you listen closely, that subtle vibration beneath the silence, the earth preparing its next sentence, its next peak, its next breath. It is a cycle older than civilization, older than bones, older than dreams. And even now, while you listen, while you rest, another volcano is forming somewhere far below, where no one can see. Let that image cradle you now. The slow dance of fire beneath water, the mountains no one climbs, the life that blooms in darkness, the stories written in stone. You don't need to understand it all. Just feel it. Feel the weight of the ocean. Feel the warmth of the earth. Feel the softness of sleep approaching as the underwater world continues, carving its quiet legacy, mountain by mountain. Far below the ocean's hush, beneath the drifting plankton and whispering currents, beneath the slow procession of ancient fish and glowing worms, beneath the darkest parts of the sea that no sunlight touches, there is another world. Not a world made of life, but of the earth's very skeleton. And in this silent realm, time moves differently, not in minutes, not in hours, but in millennia. This is where the continents themselves begin to shift, where the land we know, the very continents we call home, float atop restless forces we can't see, and the builders of this invisible motion are not wind or wave, but underwater volcanoes, rising and sinking in an eternal rhythm, deep within a world not meant for human eyes. You are drifting now, past a fissure in the seafloor. It stretches like a scar across the planet's skin, rift hundreds of kilometers long, where two tectonic plates are slowly tearing apart. You wouldn't notice at first. The rocks are still. The silence is overwhelming, but then you feel it, a faint warmth rising from below, a whisper of motion, a low vibration not heard, but felt in your bones. That is the mid-Atlantic ridge, a volcanic seam where the earth opens itself quietly, continuously to create new crust. This is known as seafloor spreading. At the boundaries where plates move apart, magma rises through the cracks, cooling in the icy depths, solidifying into new oceanic crust slowly over millions of years. This new crust pushes the older material outward, moving entire continents, inch by inch. The Atlantic Ocean, for instance, is still growing wider, not by meters, but by a few centimeters each year. The movement is so subtle you would never feel it, and yet, over time, it shapes entire worlds. This process builds underwater volcanoes along the rift zones, massive underwater mountain ranges that snake across the ocean floor like sleeping titans. And while they are mostly submerged, they are taller, wider, and longer than any mountain chain above the surface. They form the longest continuous volcanic system on Earth, stretching over 65,000 kilometers, circling the globe like a scar that never heals. This isn't just geology. This is Earth's breath. Each time magma breaks through, the planet exhales, not violently, but patiently, endlessly, with a rhythm so slow, so ancient, it begins to feel like the heartbeat of time itself. You continue to drift, your body weightless, your mind slowing, as if you're being rocked by the very pulse of the planet. You pass over vast abyssal plains, flat and empty, and then, suddenly, rising out of the void, another volcano appears, not a towering cone, but a gentle swell of earth, like a mound beneath a velvet curtain. These are shield volcanoes, broad, domed structures made by countless lava flows. They don't erupt with fury. They flow, slowly, deliberately, layer upon layer of molten basalt, cooling as it spreads, spilling outward like honey in the deep. These volcanoes build vast underwater structures, some eventually rising so high they break the ocean's surface and become islands. Others remain hidden forever, entire mountains lost to the sea. They are patient, they are ancient, they do not ask to be seen, and yet they shape everything. Now imagine standing at the base of one, even underwater. The sense of scale is overwhelming. It rises in slow spirals. Above you, it slopes, blanketed in strange life forms. Its surface shaped by centuries of lava flows. Its summit lost in the shadows above. And though you are small, it doesn't feel threatening. It feels eternal, not angry, not dangerous, just immense. A silent monument to the power of slow creation. You reach out, tracing your hand across its cool surface. It hums faintly beneath your touch, as if something deep within is still moving, still waiting. Because even when they sleep, volcanoes remember how to rise. But there is another kind of volcano beneath the sea. One that doesn't rise quietly or wait patiently. One that changes the world with a single eruption. These are the submarine stratovolcanoes, complex, steep-sided structures built by violent eruptions. They can lie dormant for centuries, and then, in a moment, they erupt with tremendous force, releasing magma, ash, and superheated gases into the water around them. Some create underwater shockwaves. Others trigger tsunamis, as their explosions displace vast amounts of water in a single breath. And yet, even in their fury, they give birth. Islands, new ecosystems, new balance. From destruction emerges possibility. One of the most powerful examples of this happened not long ago. In 2012, a new island was born in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Japan. The submarine volcano Nishinoshima erupted beneath the waves, releasing enough lava to rise above sea level, forming new land, visible for the first time to the world. Above, scientists watched from afar as black rock formed steaming shorelines, as the ocean hissed and boiled, as something permanent was created from the nothingness of open water. And that's the paradox of underwater volcanoes. They are violent, but they do not destroy. They transform. They carve new shapes into the world beneath, and wait silently for the ocean to smooth their edges, until they, too, become part of the background. Just another bump on the seafloor. Another forgotten peak in a landscape no one sees. You may wonder now, how much of Earth is still becoming? How many volcanoes are still building beneath you? How much of the planet's shape is being drawn in ink you cannot see? It's a humbling thought, to realize that the ground beneath the ocean is not still. It is moving, it is rising, it is alive. And so, as you float here, in the quiet space, between fire and water, you may feel smaller than ever, but not lost. not meaningless. Because even the smallest current plays a role in the sea. Even the quietest moment is part of the world being made, and you are part of it, too. Just one breath. In the ocean of time, drifting beside the mountains of the deep. Down here, in the coldest corners of the world, where the darkness becomes a second skin, and silence is no longer empty, there is movement, not chaotic, not sudden, but steady, ancient. You're floating, still, adrift in an ocean deeper than most mountains are tall, drifting over valleys that no ship has sailed, over ridges that no eye has seen, and beneath you, a volcano is breathing, not like lungs, but like a tide of stone, inhaling magma, exhaling crust. This is not the breath of life, but the breath of creation itself, and it begins far below the crust, in a place you cannot see, but can almost feel. The mantle, the earth, is made of layers, like the rings of a tree, or the folds of a memory. The crust, where we live, is just the shell. Beneath that lies the mantle, a massive, semi-solid region of rock, so hot and so pressurized that it behaves like a fluid, moving slowly, like honey beneath a frozen lake. And in certain places, this mantle pushes upward, hotter than its surroundings, more restless. We call these places hotspots. They are not tied to plate boundaries. They do not obey the rules. Instead, they punch through the crust like rising thoughts, creating volcanoes in the middle of oceans, far from any rift or trench. It's how Hawaii was born, how Iceland split from the sea, how underwater volcanoes form in the middle of nowhere, because the Earth simply needs them to be, and the magma that flows from these hotspots is not rage. It is relief. The planet releasing pressure, balancing its own heat, one eruption at a time. You may picture it now. A faint red glow in the blackness, a crack opening in the seafloor, and from it, a slow release of light and heat, not in fire, but in glowing stone, streaming out like blood from the bone. Lava meets seawater, a hiss of chemistry, a burst of steam, a surge of shape. Rock forms instantly, curling into soft, smooth pillows. Each shape a moment, each moment a message, from the inside of the world to the outside of time. These eruptions don't always build mountains. Sometimes they build plains, wide, flat expanses that stretch for kilometers. Other times, they form geos, underwater mountains with flat tops shaved down by the erosion of ancient waves when they once broke the surface and then sank again. These are sunken histories, islands that once stood in the daylight, now buried in darkness, forgotten but not gone. Nothing ever truly disappears beneath the ocean. It simply sinks and waits. Somewhere near the Solomon Islands, an underwater volcano once erupted so violently, so completely, that it destroyed itself. Its name was Kavahe. It still exists, but mostly in shadow now. A restless seamount, sometimes steaming at the surface, sometimes silent for years. But when it does erupt, the sea boils. And in that boiling, something strange happens. Sharks have been seen swimming inside the volcano, not just near it. Inside it, scientists have captured footage, shadows moving through acidic, superheated water. Alive where life should not be. They call them Sharkano sightings. But more than a curiosity, these encounters whisper something deeper, that life may be far more adaptable than we ever imagined. Even here, where ash clouds the water, where magma burns the sea, somehow life still finds a way to swim, and so we drift on, past the wreckage of ancient eruptions, past the growing mounds of new life, past the slow, steady breath of a planet in motion. You may feel now a kind of reverence, not fear, not AW, but respect. Respect for the invisible powers that hold the world together. The ones that do not ask to be known, but shape everything just the same. It's humbling, isn't it, to realize that most of Earth's volcanic activity happens beneath the ocean. In places no one can live, no one can touch, no one can see, and yet, these unseen places dictate so much of the world above. They form islands, they shape currents, they feed ecosystems, they warm the water, they shift the land, and all the while, they remain forgotten, buried under pressure and time, sleeping in the dark. But they are not asleep, not really, because deep beneath the plates, beneath the crust and the mantle, beneath even what we understand, there is motion. The Earth is convecting, its hot interior churning in slow circles, pushing plates apart, pulling others under, creating friction and heat, and in turn creating volcanoes. This is not destruction, it is balance. Every eruption is a correction, a release, a recalibration of pressure. The planet is not punishing, it is adjusting, healing itself. Even the most violent volcanoes are acts of self-regulation. That's a strange comfort, isn't it? That even the most chaotic forces in nature are part of a deeper harmony, one that we'll never fully see, but that always continues. And so you drift, suspended now, in thought, in dark, in warmth. Let the pressure hold you. Let the silence carry you. Let the mountains beneath remind you that the world is always changing. Even when it feels still, somewhere another volcano is rising. Somewhere another island is being born. Somewhere another story is beginning, not in fire, but in flow. And you are floating in the breath between those stories. Close your eyes now and picture the coldest place you've ever known. The kind of cold that wraps around your bones. Not sharp, not sudden, but ancient, like time itself has gone still. That's the deep sea, a place without sunlight, without wind, without sound. And yet, strangely, beneath all that cold, there are places where the ocean burns, not in color, not in flames, but in heat, in life. These are the hydrothermal vent fields, the glowing lungs of the underwater world, born from volcanic fractures, where the seafloor splits, and magma breathes close to the crust, and from these vents, hot, mineral-rich water gushes out into the abyss, in towering plumes, as dark and dense as smoke. They're called black smokers, but they are not dangerous, not to the ones who live here, because around them, in this place of scalding pressure and complete darkness, life blooms. You may think life needs light, that it needs warmth, or air, or familiar chemistry, but down here, the rules are different. Photosynthesis has no home in the deep. There is no sun to fuel it, so something else emerged. Chemosynthesis, where microbes eat minerals, where bacteria feast on sulfur, where entire ecosystems grow on energy pulled from the earth itself, not from above, but from within. You may be floating now through such a field. The vent ahead pulses like a heartbeat, clouds of black water rising through blue, rich with hydrogen sulfide, iron, manganese, and heat, so much heat, as much as 400 degrees Celsius in some vents, and yet, clustered around these plumes, is life vibrant, unusual, resilient. There are giant tube worms, red-plumed and ghost-white, anchored like candles in the dark. They have no mouths, no stomachs, and yet they feed through a symbiosis with bacteria that live inside their bodies, transforming chemicals into nourishment. Nearby, crabs and shrimp crawl across the blackened rock, unfazed by the boiling water. Some are blind, others are luminous, and if you listen closely, not with your ears, but with your quietest attention, you'll feel the movement. A soft rustle of legs, a flick of fins, the breath of the earth, wrapped in the whisper of strange creatures who know nothing of light and everything of heat. It's easy to forget that these vent fields are volcanic birthplaces. Each one exists because molten rock lies just beneath the surface, warming the water, cracking the crust, pouring minerals into the sea. They are proof that volcanoes are not just destroyers. They are incubators. In fact, some scientists believe that life on Earth began in places just like this, not in lakes, not in tide pools, but in the black smoke of a hydrothermal vent, where molecules formed chains, and chains learned to replicate, and replication learned to protect itself. All of life, perhaps, emerged from volcanic heat beneath the ocean, which means that you are a descendant of fire and pressure, a child of stone, dreaming of the sea. And maybe you're wondering now how far this goes. What else lies beneath? What other creatures, what other energies might stir in the dark, where lava meets the ocean's edge? You may have heard of brine pools, lakes within the sea, denser than the water around them, more saline, with different chemistry. They form at the base of underwater volcanoes, sealed into rocky basins. Fish swim up to them and stop hovering just above the surface, because to enter is often fatal. Too salty, too dense. They are oceans. Inside. Oceans. Windows, perhaps, into the kind of environments we might one day find on distant planets. Jupiter's moon, Europa, and Saturn's Enceladus both harbor subsurface oceans beneath icy shells. And if life can thrive here, in the boiling breath of a vent, or the acid of a brine pool, who's to say it couldn't thrive there? What if the universe is full of volcanoes beneath oceans, and oceans full of life that doesn't need the sun? You drift now deeper into that thought. Let it hold you. Let it soften the edges of what you thought was true. Let it remind you that volcanoes are not just mountains. They are gateways, not to destruction, but to origins. Every underwater volcano is a passage between what we know and what we've forgotten. They exist not only beneath the ocean, but beneath our memory. They remind us that everything solid was once fluid, that everything safe was once violent, and that sometimes the most beautiful things in nature, the most stable, the most nurturing, come from eruptions. Somewhere right now, a new vent is opening, a crack splitting along the seafloor, a pulse of heat entering the water, a whisper of sulfur, a trace of life, and no one will see it, no one will hear it, but life will come anyway, because that is the story of the deep, not one of destruction, but of quiet, relentless creation. You are floating now, far beyond the shallows of thought, beneath memory, beneath noise, beneath the stories you've been told about what the world is. The ocean stretches endlessly beneath you, and out of its darkness, shapes begin to rise. Not fish, not light, but mountains, mountains that should not be here, and yet they are. They do not pierce the surface. They do not cry out. They simply stand quiet titans, buried beneath pressure, forgotten by time, but never gone. These are the drowned volcanoes, the silent calderas of a younger Earth, the remnants of eruptions so ancient that even the ocean has forgotten their names. But they remember. Imagine a volcano that once towered above the waves, a fiery peak shaping islands, feeding life, burning its signature into the sky. And then imagine time, not in years, but in epochs. Tides rise, ice melts, the weight of water deepens, and slowly, steadily, the mountain sinks. Its lava cools, its slopes erode, its summit, once proud and jagged, is softened by centuries of sediment and silence. It is no longer a volcano. It is a geo, a flat-topped seamount, the fossil of a fire that once reshaped The sea dot. There are thousands of these, scattered across the ocean floor, each one a chapter of Earth's long, slow memory. You will never climb them. You will never see their peaks above the waves, but they are part of the land beneath the land, the architecture of the abyss, and tonight you are drifting among them. Look around, and you may see them as shadows, outlines of what once was. Some are enormous, hundreds of kilometers wide. Others are small, lost like ancient cities beneath the waves. And then, somewhere deeper still, you pass over something stranger. Not a peak, not a ridge, but a caldera, the crown of a collapsed volcano. A circle, broken and bent. Fragments, all that remains of a mountain that exploded from within. This is what happens when the earth cannot contain its own pressure, when magma empties too quickly, and the summit caves in on itself. Above the sea, calderas form craters, but below, they form traps. They catch sediment. They cradle warm currents. They shelter strange organisms that never leave their sunken home. You are now moving above one such crater. It is wide. It is ancient. It is perfectly still. And in its center is a single vent. Still smoking. Still breathing. Even after collapse, the volcano remembers how to live. You may wonder now how many such volcanoes lie beneath us. How many shapes are buried beneath the maps. How much of the world is drawn wrong because we can't see beneath the sea. The answer is most of it. The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface, and less than 20% of its seafloor has been mapped in detail. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest parts of our own ocean. And in that darkness, beneath sonar and satellite, beneath reach and reason, are volcanic fields as vast as continents, unseen, unmeasured, unexplored, and yet they shape our climate, our weather, our coastlines, our lives. The Pacific Ocean holds a secret, hidden near the western edge of its massive bowl, an underwater plateau known as the Ontong Java Plateau. It's not a single volcano. It's not even a mountain chain. It's the remains of one of the largest volcanic events in the history of the planet. Over 120 million years ago, a superplume of magma erupted from the Earth's mantle. Not in a single explosion, but in a flood of lava so massive, so sustained, that it built a plateau the size of Alaska beneath the sea. This isn't a story you'll hear often, because it's not loud, it's not visible. It's just there, sleeping beneath the waves, a monument to a fire that once covered a world. And it reminds us that volcanic activity doesn't always rise in peaks. Sometimes it spreads silently, permanently, like memory. Now, drift even lower, below the geos, below the craters, below the plateaus. You're in the Hadal Zone now, the deepest part of the ocean. Below 6,000 meters, below the trenches. Few have ever come here. Few ever will. But the volcanoes are here, too. Even in the greatest depths, there are serpentinite mud volcanoes, formed not by magma, but by compressed seawater and mineral-laden rock from the subduction zones, where one plate is dragged beneath another. They ooze instead of erupt. They rise slowly, covered in chemicals, toxic to most forms of life, but not all. Even here, microbes thrive. Even here, life holds on, and in doing so, it teaches us that volcanoes are not just structures, they are thresholds between heat and pressure, between life and extinction, between what we know and what we dare to imagine. Let yourself drift now, among the drowned volcanoes, across the ghostly along the silent ridges that once split oceans open. The water grows thicker, darker, still, and in that stillness, there's something soft, something timeless, a memory not of what is, but what has always been. The earth does not forget. even when we do, and so the mountains remain, quiet giants sleeping beneath the sea, waiting, perhaps, to one day rise again. You are deeper now than most will ever imagine, floating not above the ocean floor, but inside its mind. The crust is no longer stone, it is voice, and the volcanoes below, they are speaking, not in words, but in pressure, in rhythm, in sudden, trembling silence. Because volcanoes do not merely exist, they communicate, and the language they speak is seismic. The earth is always moving, not with violence, but with intention, and nowhere is that movement more meaningful than in the tremors of an awakening volcano. Beneath every underwater eruption is a pattern, a series of tiny earthquakes, each one a whisper of change, a flexing of ancient stone, a rearrangement of pressure no wider than a breath. These tremors build over days, over months, sometimes years, until one day there is no more room left to contain it, and the volcano opens its mouth, not to scream, but to release a slow exhale of fire into the sea, and in that breath, everything changes. You might think, underwater, eruptions are hidden, silent, muted by the weight of the ocean, but in truth, they are recorded everywhere across the globe. Oceanographic sensors sit on the seabed and float in the water column, listening. They pick up tremors from beneath the Pacific, subtle shifts near the Mariana Trench, pressure pulses from the mid-Atlantic ridge. They are listening to volcanoes as one might listen to a sleeping giant, not for snoring, but for the sound of waking. And when they hear it, they know what it means, that magma is rising, that a new chapter is about to be written in the script of the sea. But sometimes, the ocean writes faster than we can read. In 1996, a series of strange sounds echoed through the South Pacific, low frequency, inexplicable, untraceable. They called it the bloop. At first, scientists thought it might be a creature, something colossal, something unknown. But the truth, as unsettling as it is, was simpler. It came from ice, and possibly from a distant underwater volcanic eruption. No monster, just the earth, shifting. Still, what is more monstrous than the planet moving in a voice you can't understand? Now, imagine you are floating above an erupting volcano, not watching from a ship, not from a satellite, but from within the water. At first, a shimmer, a heat wave through the salt. Then a sudden jet of smoke-black water, rising in a twisting plume. It isn't fire, it is fluid rock, glowing, folding, transforming in real time. The eruption is silent to your ears, but not to your body. You feel it, a tremble in your fingertips, like the sea itself is growling. But gently, lava hits cold seawater, and it hardens instantly. The ocean turns the volcano's rage into stone. It does not resist, it absorbs, and in doing so, it reshapes both. All of this happens in darkness. No light, no camera, no witness, and still, the volcano does not ask to be seen. It only asks to be released. It builds pressure until the crust breaks, until the magma flows, until the body breathes again. It's easy to see volcanoes as violent, as reckless. But, in truth, they are systems of balance. Every eruption is a safety valve. Every tremor, a warning. Every silence, a moment of peace before the pressure returns. It is not destruction. It is equilibrium, the only way the earth knows how to survive itself. Even the most catastrophic eruptions have their rhythm. There is a volcano named Kik-M-Jenny beneath the Caribbean Sea. It sits quietly for years, then suddenly rumbles, sending bubbles racing to the surface. Sometimes, it releases clouds of gas, so large, they displace the water and create dangerous voids that could capsize a ship. With waves, but with absence, an empty breath, where water used to be. And it reminds us that even nothingness can kill, that the silence after an eruption can be more terrifying than the eruption itself. You float now, above a silent field, an area where a volcano once spoke, but no longer. The rocks are cool, the water is still, the heat has gone, and yet the pressure remains, unseen, unfelt, but building you. Sense it in the bones of the earth, the way the crust flexes when no one is looking, the way the ridges tighten, the way the seabed curves, not out, but inward, something holding its breath. And maybe that's the truth about volcanoes. They aren't random. They aren't angry. They are waiting, waiting to speak again, waiting to shift the world, just slightly enough to be remembered. And you are part of that memory now, not as a witness, not as a survivor, but as a listener, drifting in the deepest part of the sea, where volcanoes dream in pulses, and the earth tells stories in pressure and stone. Let it hold you. Let the silence surround you, because somewhere, the next eruption has already begun, in thought, in tremor, in silence. And what will it say when it finally breaks through? Let yourself drift further now, past the last whisper of light, past the final flickers of bioluminescence, into the unlit, unremembered hollow beneath the crust. It is here, in this quiet, mineral-stained gloom, that something ancient waits. It does not rise. It does not move. It does not shout, but it remembers. And its memory is magma. You are now floating above what geologists call a magma chamber, a pocket of molten rock, swollen with heat and pressure, buried miles beneath the ocean floor. It is not a lake. It is not a sea. It is a reservoir of Earth's inner fire, held in suspension, silent and invisible, until something shifts above this chamber, like a heart beneath bone. Beats slowly, but it never stops. And when the pressure builds beyond containment, when fractures form in the surrounding crust, this magma surges upward, finding cracks, finding pathways, seeking release, and where it reaches the ocean floor, a volcano is born. But magma doesn't always rise vertically. Sometimes it spreads sideways, squeezing into existing layers, cooling in place, never breaking through. These frozen veins, called sills and dikes, become the skeleton of new underwater mountains. They are the scaffolding of seamounts that will take 1,000 centuries to grow, and each time the magma freezes, the planet learns something. The chemistry of the rock changes, new minerals form, crystals align into patterns older than any language. It's like the earth is writing itself into stone, layer by layer, memory by memory, and you are floating through its archives. Consider this: each underwater volcano tells time, not in years, but in layers of lava, one flow after another. Each layer a page. Each page, a period in Earth's life you will never touch, but are still made of. When you look at a cross-section of an extinct seamount, you are not just seeing rock. You are seeing time solidified, a geological biography, written in basalt and silence. And every now and then, the sea erodes. Part of that biography exposes the layers, reveals the sequence of eruptions, the stops and starts, the magma that came fast and the magma that came slow. The difference is visible if you know how to look. But who among us truly knows how to look beneath a volcano? You continue drifting, and now you are deep beneath the mid-Atlantic ridge again, not above it, inside it. Here, the oceanic crust is being created constantly. Magma from the mantle rises through narrow rifts, cools almost instantly when it touches water, and builds ridges that push continents apart. This is one of the birthplaces of Earth's crust, not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet factory of rock. And in this moment, you realize something. This isn't a place of death. This is a womb. It's not just that volcanoes destroy and create. It's that volcanoes record. They preserve the pressures of an era, the chemistry of a moment, the geometry of a shift. They are not just forces of nature. They are repositories of change. Beneath each eruption is a decision. Beneath each ridge, a memory. Beneath each layer, a reason. Now picture this. A volcano builds slowly beneath miles of water. One eruption every century. 10 layers every 1,000 years. A complete mountain after 1,000,000. But then, a collapse. A sudden release. The magma chamber empties too quickly. The summit caves in. The structure dies. And yet the memory is preserved in the rubble, in the angles of the rock, in the sudden slope of what was once a peak dot to a trained eye. Even the shape of a broken volcano tells you how it lived. And in that way, nothing is ever truly erased, only rewritten. Now, deeper still, you have entered the mantle transition zone, the place between what we understand and what we only theorize. Here, magma pools form in complex shapes, held back by pressure, released through weakness. Some researchers believe that enormous, slow-moving magma plumes rise from even deeper within the Earth, from the core mantle boundary itself. These plumes feed supervolcanoes, not always above water, sometimes beneath. They take millions of years to rise, and when they breach the crust, they can alter continents, change atmospheres, rewrite climate. The Ontong Java plateau you passed earlier, that massive underwater volcanic plain, may have come from a plume like this, a mantle memory surfacing as lava and freezing into stone. What else is written in those flows? What stories sleep in that rock? What ancient tremors? What chemical signatures? What buried catastrophes lie dormant in the lava that built our planet's floor? You may never know, but the Earth does, and it continues writing. Even now, even here, as you drift, as you sleep, as magma rises from places you cannot see, let yourself be quiet. Let yourself dissolve into this flow of thought, because thought, like magma, moves unseen beneath the surface. It pools, it builds, it heats, and stretches, and twists, until it must break through, and when it does, it becomes something new, a new ridge, a new island, a new question. So now you ask, if every volcano remembers what came before it, what are you remembering now? You are no longer floating, you are suspended, not by water, not by gravity, but by depth itself, because now you are somewhere between worlds, between the surface you left behind, and a core no one has ever seen. This is not the ocean floor. This is what lies beneath it, a place you cannot swim, a place you cannot imagine, and yet you are here, drifting inside the invisible realm where volcanoes are born, where continents are carved, where the heat that powers the Earth rises slowly, silently, in waves of pressure so vast they can bend time. They call this region the astenosphere, a layer of the upper mantle, where solid rock flows like wax, where heat and gravity sculpt the Earth's bones, where the tectonic plates above float like rafts on a sea of stone. It is from this shifting mantle that magma is drawn, from temperatures exceeding 200 degrees Celsius, from minerals under unimaginable pressure, from the restless stirrings of a planet that never sleeps. You cannot see it, you cannot hear it, but you feel it as vibration, as warmth, as memory. It is the heartbeat of volcanoes. It is the engine of the Earth, and it is always moving here. Beneath the crust, volcanoes are not yet mountains. They are possibilities. They are zones of melting rock, trapped in patterns of density and heat. They rise only when the balance breaks, when the weight above fractures, when the heat below grows too great, when the crust yields to pressure it cannot withstand, and when that happens, the magma surges upward, not in a straight line, but in twists and pulses, finding faults, finding weaknesses, finding expression. Each plume is a thought, each fault line a sentence, each eruption a paragraph in a book the earth writes in fire. You drift now through a mantle plume, a narrow column of heat rising from the deep mantle, possibly from the very boundary between the core and the stone. This heat is ancient, older than the continents, older than the oceans. It has been rising for millions of years, gathering beneath the crust, swelling in silence. Waiting plumes like this create chains of volcanoes, not one, but many, each one forming as the crust drifts above the heat. This is how the Hawaiian Islands formed, each island a moment, each moment a message, from a plume that refuses to fade. It's a strange thought, that something so ancient and slow could write a map of islands in the sea, but it did, and it still does. You are weightless now, drifting through the middle of the planet's memory, not up, not down, but within. Here, gravity softens, time bends, thoughts stretch out like lava flows, meandering across millennia. You see not just what is, but what was, and what will be. The next volcano is already forming, not in water, not in light, but in pressure. It is a shadow now, no more than a wrinkle in the mantle, but it grows, slowly, certainly. In 10 million years, it may reach the ocean floor. In 15 million, it may break the surface. In 20 million, it may become an island, a place, a home. But for now, it sleeps, and so do you. Let yourself sink, not lower, just deeper, deeper into what it means for stone to remember heat. Deeper into what it means for silence to prepare eruption, because beneath every crust, beneath every continent, beneath every thought, there is pressure, not yet expressed, not yet understood, but present. And if you listen quietly enough, you will hear it move. There's one more place to drift, not farther down, but inward, toward the core mantle boundary. We don't know what it looks like. No one's been there. No one will go, but we suspect it's where the largest mantle plumes begin, where immense structures, perhaps thousands of kilometers across, rise slowly toward the surface. Some call them LLSVPs, large, low, shear velocity provinces, regions where seismic waves slow down, where something dense, something ancient gathers. We don't know what they are. We only know they move, and in doing so, they reshape the entire world. Perhaps there was a time when these deep plumes fueled the supervolcanoes that altered the sky, that changed the course of life on Earth. Perhaps they will again, not tomorrow, not in your lifetime, but someday, and the ocean will rise, and new ridges will form, and volcanoes, mountains of the deep, will be born again. Not in chaos, but in pattern, in rhythm, in balance. Now breathe, not with lungs, but with awareness. You've drifted past fire, past silence, past memory, and all of it, the lava, the ridges, the vents, the calderas, came from this place. The place beneath the place, the realm without maps, the heat beneath your every step. This is not the bottom. There is no bottom. Only layers, melting into each other, rising, breaking, beginning again. You've been deep, deeper than most minds dare to imagine. But now, you rise, not fast, not forced, but like a thought, returning from the unconscious. And as you ascend from the molten memory of the earth, you begin to see motion again. Not just tremors, but life, not light. But form, strange shapes, slipping in and out of view like dreams floating in a sleeping mind. They are the ones who dwell near fire, the ones who do not fear heat, who do not flee pressure, who build homes in volcanic soot and boiling currents. These are the creatures who live not beside volcanoes, but within them. The first thing you see is not a fish, not a worm, but a shimmer, like a ripple in warm glass, and then it coalesces into form. A colony of Riftia pachiptila, the giant tube worms of the hydrothermal vents. No eyes, no mouths, no intestines, only long, pale bodies sheathed in white chitinous tubes, planted in the mineral-rich soil like alien flowers blooming in darkness. Their red plumes stretch toward the vent, pulling in hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, the invisible threads of survival. Inside their bodies, bacteria do the work. CHEMOSYNTHESIS. They transform poison into food. They live, not in spite of fire, but because of it. You drift closer and see others. Vent shrimp, blind to light, covered in sensors that detect faint heat differences. Their eyes, if they can be called eyes, are tuned not to vision, but to temperature. They gather near the hottest edges of the vent fields, swaying gently in the current, feeding on bacteria that coat the rocks like black snow. Nearby, crabs, their shells bleached white by minerals, scramble over lava ridges. They fight for position, for access to heat, to flow, to life. Every movement here is quiet, measured, as if the creatures understand they are borrowing space from something more powerful beneath them. This is not a coral reef. This is not a kelp forest. This is a city built on fire. And like all cities, it has its own architecture. The chimneys of the vents rise tall black smokers, white smokers, spewing water that can reach 400 degrees Celsius. And yet, mere centimeters away, the water is near. Freezing. This sudden shift, this razor-thin boundary between extremes, is where life has carved a niche, not by conquering heat, but by cooperating with it. Living here is not about resistance. It is about adaptation, about surrender, about becoming something that fits the fire. And you realize something now. These creatures are not just survivors. They are descendants. They may carry within them the chemistry of Earth's earliest life, because long before forests, before animals, before anything swam in sunlit seas, there were microbes at volcanic vents, thriving, reproducing, evolving. It's possible, even likely, that all life began here, in places just like this, not in Eden, but in heat, not in paradise, but in pressure. The very first cell may have formed in the warm cracks of a hydrothermal vent, 1 billion years ago, surrounded by nothing but darkness and stone. And from that moment, everything else unfolded. You feel it now, the weight of inheritance. You are not just an observer. You are a descendant of volcanic life, a distant cousin of bacteria that feast on sulfur, a relative, not in appearance, but in origin. And when you look into the flickering shadows of this volcanic city, you don't just see strangeness, you see ancestry, the DNA of life still tangled with heat, still shaped by fire. It humbles you, not in fear, but in awe, that even in such an alien place, life not only exists, it thrives. Let yourself drift further. You pass over another vent field, and another. Each one slightly different. Some are older. The chimneys collapsed. The minerals cooled. The life faded. Others are newborn vents just opened. Heat surging into the water. Organisms rushing in as if pulled by memory. It's a cycle. A rhythm. Eruption. Invasion. Expansion. Collapse. And again. And again. And life dances through it without pause, as if it remembers that death is only a doorway to the next bloom. You pass a vent that has been silent for perhaps a century. The organisms have left. The water is cold. The rock is dull. And yet beneath the surface, a tremor, a pulse of heat, a future eruption waiting to be born. And with it, a new colony, a new ecosystem, a new beginning, all from the same fire. You drift on through dark water made golden by the slow flicker of volcanic light. Then what else is possible? You've been drifting for so long now that the movement feels like stillness. Your breath is slow. Your thoughts are softer than the water around you. And yet the world continues beneath your body, growing, changing, unfolding, without ever asking for your attention. You are still beneath the ocean, still far below the reach of the sun. But the heat, the fire that once roared through these waters is quieter now, not gone, only buried, hidden in folds of cooled lava, tucked in the seams between tectonic plates, folded into sediment that falls like ancient snow across a volcanic world slowly going cold. This is where the volcano sleeps. But sleep, you must remember, is not the absence of life. It is simply a different kind of motion. You're passing over an extinct hydrothermal vent. The chimney has collapsed. The rock is gray, not black. No steam, no bubbles, no shimmer in the water. At first glance, a graveyard, but look closer, tiny. Organisms still cling to the cracks. Bacterial mats stretch thin across the old chimney walls, like lace draped over broken stone, and beneath the surface, deep in the porous veins of cooled lava, warmth lingers, pockets of heat that never left, whispers of the fire that once surged here. And those whispers are enough for life to hold on, not thrive, but persist, as if these creatures know that one day the fire might return, and until then they wait. Deeper still, you drift into a volcanic valley, a basin carved not by water, but by the slow collapse of a magma chamber millions of years ago. This is a caldera, long since flooded, and in its silence, a forest has grown, not of trees, not of coral dot, but of mineral spires, thin and tall, rising from the floor like ancient ruins. They're not alive, but life winds through them, thread-like worms, single-celled swimmers, microbial colonies that treat this landscape of rock as if it were a reef. The heat here is minimal, barely above freezing, but it's enough, just enough to keep the cells moving, just enough to keep memory alive. Because in places like this, even death becomes habitat. Even the echoes of eruption offer shelter to something small. Let yourself rest in this valley a moment. Let your mind go still. Let your breath follow the slow rhythm of minerals forming, breaking, reforming again. This is not the wild center of volcanic life. This is its edge, and yet the edge has its own power, because here, life is not just surviving extreme conditions. It is surviving the absence of extremes. No bright heat, no violent pressure, only remnants. And in those remnants, a kind of wisdom, an understanding that life does not require drama, that it can exist in low light, in low energy, in the quiet. Between eruptions, this is sub-threshold life, not frozen, not asleep, just slow. Now, further still, you are entering what scientists call the deep biosphere, a layer of life hidden within the rocks themselves, not on top of the volcano, but inside it. Here, microbes burrow into basalt. They feed on trace minerals. They replicate at a pace so slow it would take them 1,000 years to divide just once. And yet, they persist. They have persisted for millions of years. Some estimate that up to 70% of all Earth's microbial life lives in this deep biosphere, beneath the ocean floor, within the stone, beneath the old volcanoes, invisible, patient, immortal by comparison. We didn't know this world existed until recently, but it has always been here, watching us, waiting for us to look in the right direction. And now you're here, not seeing it, but sensing it, the hum of life so far removed from the surface that it doesn't care whether the sky exists or not. And now, a shift, not in the water, not in the crust, in you. Because once you've seen these places, these cracks where life refuses to die, you cannot return unchanged. You begin to question the boundary between alive and not, between movement and stillness, between fire and memory. Perhaps a volcano is not alive, but it gives birth to life. And perhaps these organisms are not intelligent, but they remember their origin in ways we can't. They live not in time, but in pattern, in presence, in repetition that stretches across eons. And in their endless, silent waiting, they teach you something simple. That even in the places where light cannot go, where pressure crushes, where the earth forgets itself, something remembers you. Let yourself rise slowly now, not toward the surface, but toward the threshold, toward the point where geology and biology blur into one. You are no longer exploring volcanoes. You are becoming part of them. Your breath echoes the slow eruptions. Your thoughts mirror the drifting bacteria. Your sleep folds into the rhythms of the stone. And as you rise, you carry with you the quietest question of all. If life can exist here, in darkness, in stillness, in the absence of light or warmth or sound, then what other hidden chambers of the world or the mind might still be waiting to erupt? You have drifted through the dark, through pressure and fire, through silence and stone. But now the water begins to change. Not in color, not in sound, but in temperature. It cools, it slows, it becomes thick, as if the sea itself has forgotten how to move quickly. And ahead of you, there is no ridge, no vent, no chimney, only a curtain of pale stillness, stretching far above your head. Pressing down from the world above, you have reached the ice, not floating ice, but something older, deeper. A shell of frozen memory beneath which fire continues to whisper. This is the polar frontier, where volcanoes sleep beneath glaciers and dream in silence for thousands of years. You are now beneath the ice shelves of Antarctica, but not drifting above rock. You are floating above something stranger, a submerged volcano, part of the West Antarctic Rift System, a fault zone hidden beneath kilometers of ice and seawater. It's not the kind of volcano that explodes. It doesn't roar. It doesn't smoke. It melts. It melts the base of glaciers from below, carving hidden lakes, creating rivers that no human has seen, feeding the ocean through tunnels in the ice, older than any map. And yet, its magma is real, measured, confirmed, lurking beneath Mount Erebus, beneath Mount Sidley, beneath the sleeping white, a hot breath beneath a frozen mask. You drift lower now, your body passing through supercooled water, hovering above a seabed of black basalt and powdered ice, and you begin to understand this is not just a geological contradiction, it's a philosophical one. What does it mean for fire and ice to coexist, to be layered, not as opposites, but as partners? A volcano beneath a glacier is not fighting it, it is feeding it. Melting ice forms rivers. Rivers carry minerals. Minerals feed microbial life. And so, even here, in the harshest contradiction imaginable, life survives. Life begins beneath Antarctica. There are more than 100 suspected volcanoes. Many lie dormant. Some are likely extinct, but others still stir, still pulse. Some are active, sending subtle tremors through the cold crust, causing slow flows of meltwater that trickle silently toward the southern ocean. The water never boils. It barely warms, but it's enough to shift the base of the ice sheet, enough to loosen glaciers, enough to remind us the earth moves, even when it looks still. You are drifting now through one of these hidden meltwater rivers, not wide, not deep, just a thin stream winding between layers of ancient ice and the black rock below. No fish, no current, only quiet. And in that quiet, you see shapes, microbial colonies, feeding on trace gases. They've never seen the sun. They've never touched the open sea. They live entirely between fire and ice, drawing warmth from volcanic rock, drawing moisture from melting ice, existing in a liminal space where nothing else can survive. This is not extremophilia. It is normal to them. They do not know the word harsh. They do not know the concept of inhospitable. They simply are alive, present, perfectly suited to the forgotten world they inhabit. Let yourself drift through their realm. Imagine time here, not counted in years, but in degrees, in microns of melt, in molecular exchanges between rock. Of these rivers have likely existed for hundreds of thousands of years, flowing, refreezing, flowing again. They have carved entire caverns beneath the glaciers. Rooms no larger than your body, lined with mineral crystals, warmed by ancient magma, and no one has seen them. No one. Until now, because here you are, breathing it in, not with lungs, but with silence. You rise again, not into warmth, but into thicker cold. The ice ceiling above is kilometers thick, and yet it glows faintly, not from light, but from pressure, a slow, crushing brightness that presses down on everything below, and still. Beneath that weight, the volcanoes remain, not extinguished, not buried, only waiting. They do not rage, they do not roar, they melt. They melt the world just enough to keep it changing. And now, you drift over Gackle Ridge, an underwater volcanic system beneath the Arctic Ocean here, beneath the ice cap of the north. Eruptions are slow, silent, measured in centimeters of growth per year. But they do happen. In 1999, seismic activity was detected, deep rumbles far beneath the Arctic ice, proof that even in the coldest, stillest waters on Earth, volcanoes continue to reshape the world, not with drama, but with persistence. This is what volcanoes teach you now. Not power, but patience. They are not explosions. They are long conversations between the planet's inner fire and the cold that tries to silence it. And from those conversations, new life emerges, new forms, new rivers, new questions. You float now in that question, not above it, inside it, and you wonder, if fire can sleep beneath ice, then what other opposites have we misunderstood? You're rising now, but it's not a return, it's a revelation. For so long, you've drifted through darkness, through magma, through mineral forests, through rivers, beneath ice. But now, you begin to feel something shift. The pressure softens. The water is less heavy, and ahead of you, there's movement, not from the Earth's core, but from the ocean itself. You are entering a realm where underwater volcanoes touch the world, above not with flame, not with ash, but with influence. Because, even when you cannot see them, even when they never break the surface, these volcanoes shape the world in ways that are everywhere, and yet almost always ignored. Look around. You're now above a seamount chain, a series of underwater mountains, formed by repeated eruptions along a moving tectonic plate. They never broke the surface. They never became islands. But they stand tall beneath the water, rising thousands of meters from the abyssal plain. There are more than 100,000 of these undersea mountains, scattered across the global ocean floor, each one born from fire, each one a chapter in Earth's long volcanic story, and each one a pillar of life. Because, as currents pass over these peaks, nutrients rise with them, iron, phosphorus, silica, all drawn up from the deep. These seamounts act like stirring spoons in the bowl of the ocean, mixing the layers, bringing what's needed from below to above. And because of that, plankton bloom, fish swarm, life gathers, not because of light, but because of structure, because of invisible architecture. Beneath the waves, ecosystems depend on mountains no one has ever seen. That the food chain begins not just with sunlight and algae, but with lava flows frozen into perfect shapes miles beneath the surface. You float now above one such peak, a volcano that last erupted 4 million years ago. Its summit lies just 800 meters beneath the sea, too deep for divers, too shallow for silence, and all around it, schools of fish circle in slow spirals, corals cling to its flanks, giant squid drift through its shadows. You begin to feel how this mountain affects everything around it, not with violence, but with presence. It doesn't move, but it changes everything that does now. Follow the current. You're pulled slowly toward a shallow shelf, where an underwater volcano once rose above the sea level, and then sank. This is a a flat-topped seamount, its summit sheared by erosion before it was drowned again by the rising sea. It was once an island, now it is a ghost, and yet still alive. Coral reefs cover its summit, sea turtles pass overhead, currents strike its slopes and swirl upward like breath through stone. And again, you feel it, the quiet influence of a structure long forgotten, still shaping the living world, even when drowned, even when buried, even when nameless. Let your mind rest in this. Let the idea settle in your bones that most of what holds the world together is not on the surface. It is beneath it, not just physically, but philosophically. The foundation of everything is made of things we rarely see. Underwater volcanoes are not decoration. They are design. They form ridges that move continents. They build islands that grow forests. They change ocean currents. They change weather. They even affect the carbon cycle, how much carbon the ocean absorbs, how the water chemistry shifts, how the atmosphere evolves. All of it touched by fire that no one sees. You drift over a ridge, now part of the East Pacific Rise, a slow-growing seam of the Earth, stretching beneath the Pacific Ocean, where magma rises from the mantle and spreads the sea floor apart. Every year, this ridge grows by a few centimeters, not much, but enough to push continents away from each other, enough to open oceans, enough to close them again in cycles of hundreds of millions of years. And as the floor spreads, it builds mountains, not above water, but far below, underwater. Volcanoes that erupt slowly, laying down basalt, like layers of skin, healing, stretching, becoming. These volcanoes never roar. They never catch fire, but they change the shape of the world with every breath. Now you rise toward the surface. The water warms, light filters down, dim and blue. You see the edge of things, the edge of the visible world, the limit of the eye, and you realize that everything you've passed through, every magma chamber, every caldera, every bacterial bloom was part of a larger system, a world that does not care whether it is seen. It only cares that it works, and it does, quietly, faithfully, endlessly. As you reach the boundary between light and shadow, you feel something strange, not fear, not awe, but trust, a trust in the invisible, a trust in the hidden fire, a trust in the mountains that rise without notice, feed without credit, and change without asking. You float now, half in darkness, half in light, and you ask if the most important forces in the world are the ones we never see. Then what else in your life has shaped you without ever revealing itself? You are rising now, not quickly, not suddenly, but with the steady weight of everything you've seen, through ridges, through ruins, through sleeping magma and rivers of cold. You carry with you a silence that no longer feels empty, but full. And now, as the surface comes into view, you realize This is not the end of the journey. It is where fire becomes form, where molten dreams, risen through darkness, finally break into light and solidify as land. You breach the surface, not with a splash, but with breath, gentle, wide, endless, before you an island still young, still raw. Steam curls from its cracks, basalt cliffs still shine with salt and heat. No trees yet, not from wishes, but from underwater volcanoes that erupt again and again until the ocean yields. Over time, lava cools, hardens, builds upon itself, layer after layer, eruption after eruption, until the peak rises above the waves. A mountain made not to be seen, but seen despite itself. The Hawaiian Islands were formed this way. So were the Canaries, the Galapagos, the Azores, even Iceland, rising at the seam between two tectonic plates, was shaped by underwater fire pushing up through cold dot. And every one of these lands, these countries, these homes, these cultures, exist because of something that once erupted in total darkness. Think about that. Think about how nations stand on cooled lava, how cities balance atop basalt, not on a known island, but on a newborn. It's quiet. The air smells of minerals and salt. There are no footsteps but your own. And yet, you know this is only the beginning. Soon, birds will come, seeds will drift in on the wind, lichens will colonize the rock, rain will carve grooves, tides will wear edges smooth, and what was once a vent in the deep, a crack in the crust, a whisper in the mantle, will become a world, a place with names, with maps, with memories. All from a single pulse of fire that refused to stay hidden. You walk further now, barefoot across warm stone. The ground hums, not loudly. The magma still moves, and someday this island may grow, or split, or sink again. And the cycle will continue, because that's what volcanoes do. They don't end, they don't arrive. They become now. Stand still, feel the rock beneath you. Feel how solid it seems. And remember, this rock was once liquid. This island was once pressure. This mountain was once a whisper beneath the sea. Everything permanent was once fluid. Everything solid was once soft, and perhaps so were you. Look out at the horizon now. The water glitters. But completion. You have followed fire from its deepest beginnings, through molten chambers, through frozen rivers, through cities of worms and smoke, all the way to land, to surface, to sky. And now you understand, mountains of the deep do not just shape the world, they are the world. So close your eyes, feel the lava beneath your feet, feel the memory in the rock. Feel the volcano within you that has built and built and built until you, too, became something solid. And ask yourself, if land is only cooled fire, what have you yet to become?